In the attic, Joseph turns on an old tape recorder and listens to logs from his grandfather Benjamin, a professor of ancient history. Benjamin speaks of the dangers of the Necronomicon, also known as the Book of the Dead. It's an ancient tome of prophecies and demon resurrection passages found by an organization called the Circle of the Wise Men. They ignored Benjamin's warnings and read some passages anyway, which unleashed demons onto the world. Benjamin found an object of great power that could send those demons back to hell and has hidden it with a hex that will keep it safe. If this hex is unsealed, the demons will sense it and come for it. While listening to the tape, Joseph takes lots of notes. At that moment his pen falls off and rolls towards the old wall. When he rips off the wood, he finds a mysterious bundle. Joseph uses some scissors to open it and stares in shock at the object inside. Meanwhile, Leo and Jared are fishing in a lake. When Leo gets a call from his girlfriend, he goes to the woods to talk in private. Jared is still fishing when suddenly something begins to pull both poles. Leo's unattended pole is yanked into the water while Jared desperately tries to reel in the catch. To his horror, it's the rotten head of a scalped woman. Jared drops the pole and it falls into the lake while he calls for Leo. The fishing lines pop up and wrap themselves around Jared's face and neck, bringing him down as they choke him. The hooks begin to pull his skin, slowly ripping it off as they drag him into the water. When Leo returns, he sees Jared in the lake asking for help, so he quickly gets on a boat. Jared has disappeared by the time Leo makes it to that spot, but soon he resurfaces and clings to Leo as he keeps begging for help. Blood dyes the water red and soon Jared's face is obliterated. When Leo finally pulls him out of the lake, Jared's lower body is missing. After throwing up, Leo notices a woman watching him before disappearing underwater. A terrified Leo fails to start the boat and the woman flips it over, making him fall. After some struggle, Leo manages to resurface, only to see the woman standing on the boat. When she moves her hands, the water starts to boil and Leo screams in pain, his body burning up while dozens of dead fish float around him. Skin covered in blisters, Leo manages to swim to the shore and collapses. The woman walks past him and crosses the woods to reach a road, where she stands motionless until nightfall. Eventually a car appears and the woman steps out, so she's run over. In a nightclub, Joseph is celebrating his birthday with his brother William, his girlfriend Thea, and Will's wife Alice. At first they're having fun, but things get tense when William scolds Alice for drinking. Then he gives Joseph an expensive pen, saying it's a gift from both him and his wife. However, Alice didn't know about this and brought her own gift, which is a beautiful picture she took of Joseph and Thea. This annoys William and another argument ensues. Alice gets irritated, so she goes outside to smoke. She ends up friendly chatting with one of the employees, so when William comes out, he accuses her of speaking badly of him to his staff. He asks her to come back and she refuses, so he grabs her arm to try to drag her. Alice immediately pushes him off and they start arguing again. William breaks his car's window in frustration only to injure his hand, yet he blames it all on her. Alice throws one last insult before walking away in tears. Afterward, Joseph offers to drive William home since he's drunk, but William ignores him and leaves in his car. He's driving so fast that by the time he reaches the road by the woods, he doesn't see the woman and strikes her. The car rolls down the hill and lands upside down, leaving William trapped. He hears the woman groaning in pain and tries to call 911, but he accidentally drops the phone. Suddenly the woman calls his name as her head slowly splits off her body. A creepy voice asks him to take her to his family before the head falls off and rolls out of the car. The head begins reciting an incantation, which turns off the lights and tightens the seatbelt around William before setting the car on fire. The windows explode while William tries to escape to no avail. Then the head laughs as the fire grows and kills William. Sometime later the family holds a small service to say goodbye to William, and his mother Susan says a few words. Alice is asked if she wants to say something too, but she explains she didn't prepare anything and William's parents judge her. When the casket is taken away for cremation, William's father Edgar asks the employee to give him 5 minutes with his son. Once he's alone, Edgar starts to cry and can't bring himself to speak. At that moment he hears a noise inside the casket and the lid shakes. Edgar immediately grabs a metal hook and repeatedly hits the lid until he makes a hole. A charred black hand grabs Edgar's wrist, burning him. Edgar falls back and watches in shock how William's burned body stands up. When the employee returns, William proceeds to kill him. Minutes later, Edgar is desperately honking the horn to convince the group to leave, but he doesn't tell them what happened. At the old family home, Susan discovers that Joseph still has all of Benjamin's things and that he's planning to write a book about his research. She angrily begins throwing the things in a trash bag, saying that her father was in a cult and wasn't a good man because he spent more time with the wise men than with his family. When Susan's sister got sick, Benjamin finally left them for good, claiming he had to find a way to protect them from evil. Susan had to take care of the family and will never forgive him. When Joseph goes downstairs, he finds Thea and Alice struggling to get Grandma Polly on her chairlift. Polly slaps Alice and accuses Thea of being a thief. She only calms down when Susan shows up, but she still glares at everyone else. Afterward, Joseph takes out the bag with Benjamin's things and hears Edgar coughing really badly. He fails to start the brush trimmer and Joseph explains it's out of gas, so Edgar snaps and rushes to the basement. While looking for gas, Edgar is shocked to hear William's voice asking for help. When he goes to investigate, the door slams closed and the lamp explodes. Edgar pulls out a knife as he hears creepy voices asking him to let them in. Failing to ignore them, Edgar's hand is forced to move the knife for self-deletion. At that moment Alice enters the basement and hears a noise, so she opens the door just in time to take the knife from Edgar's hand. Then Alice puts the knife in her pocket while Edgar asks her not to tell Susan. During lunch, Joseph plays a video of William and Alice's wedding. Edgar keeps coughing and Alice makes sure to keep knives away from him. Things get tense when Susan asks what will happen to William's club and Alice says she's considering going back to her hometown in France. Edgar notices that Alice isn't wearing her wedding ring and she tries to explain, but he snaps when the dog keeps asking him for food. Then Edgar has disgusting manners while eating and spits his food on the plate. He gets angrier as he blames Joseph for William's death, saying he didn't stop him from getting in the car. Edgar thinks the family is happy that William is dead and says he went to hell. When the dog whines again, Edgar repeatedly stabs him in the head with a fork. Joseph runs to stop his father, only for Edgar to break a bottle on his head. Then Edgar collapses and begs for help as his body shakes. Thaye and Joseph put Edgar in their car and leave for the hospital. Joseph has a first aid kit and starts taking care of his father's wounds. In the middle of the road, Edgar becomes fully possessed and his eyes start glowing. Suddenly he takes the scissors from the kit and starts slashing Thaye's face. When Joseph tries to stop him, Edgar pushes him back while Thaye loses control of the vehicle. The car goes off the road and crashes. Edgar takes the keys and keeps on slashing Thaye's face until Joseph ties him up using the seatbelt. However, Edgar kicks the dashboard to throw his seat back, crushing his son. When Thaye is about to get out, Edgar closes the door on her hand, chopping off her fingers. Then Joseph tries to stop his father again, but Edgar pushes him through the ceiling window and the glass shatters all over them. When Joseph falls, the airbag gets activated and throws both men back. Edgar quickly recovers and starts choking Thaye with the seatbelt, so Joseph reaches for the gun that he keeps in the glove box. He points it at his dad as he asks him to let go of Thaye, but Edgar just presses his face against it, telling him to do it. At that moment Thaye finds the extinguisher under the seat and uses it to fill the car with fog. While Joseph fights his father again, Thaye tries to open the door to no avail. Then Joseph decides to escape through the broken ceiling while Edgar pulls out the headrest from the seat, which he uses to hit her a few times before stabbing her in the face and neck. Back in the house, Alice and Susan bury the dog. Then Alice takes the shovel back to the shed and accidentally drops it on the bag with Benjamin's research, causing the things to fall out. When she picks everything up, she reads Benjamin's notes but can't understand them. She also reads a spell without knowing what it is, which revives the dog. He jumps through the window and attacks Alice, who grabs a pair of shears to stab him. Afterward Alice enters the house but Susan can't understand her because she's speaking French. At that moment Joseph returns and tells them that Edgar killed Thaye. Then someone knocks and Joseph is shocked to hear Thaye's voice. Alice opens the door and Thaye comes inside with yellow eyes and the headrest still stuck in her face. After removing the headrest, Thaye grabs a candle and toasts to the perfect family before drinking the melted wax. Next Thaye tackles Susan, so Alice and Joseph have to pull her back. After lots of struggle, they manage to throw her in the basement. Thaye calls Joseph using a sweet voice and he falls for it, but Alice drags him out of the basement and locks the door. Susan, Alice, Joseph, and Polly rush out of the house only to find Edgar. He whistles to call the dog and pulls out a gun, saying that Joseph should be dead and not William. Then Edgar fires the gun to self-delete, yet he's alive. He shoots several more times and holes keep appearing in his head, but he still lives. In the basement, Thaye turns up the heat by turning on the old furnace with her new demonic powers. The rest of the family are coming back inside and barricading the doors to prevent Edgar from following them. When Alice looks out the window, Edgar waves at her. Joseph checks his phone but there's no signal. Polly has been left alone in her wheelchair and hears someone pounding on the basement door. When a hole appears in the wood, Polly comes closer and finds Thaye asking for help, so she opens the door. The others hear Polly scream and rush to check on her, finding her on the floor. Alice and Joseph see some blood drops on the floor and follow them to discover Thaye in the living room throwing gasoline on the fireplace. Her creepy voice promises to kill the wise men. While Susan takes Polly upstairs, Joseph grabs a lamp and gets ready to attack, but Thaye is gone. Suddenly blood falls on Alice's face, so they look up to find Thaye on the ceiling. She jumps to tackle Alice and they start fighting on the floor. Alice asks Joseph for help but he's frozen in fear. Susan comes back to try to drag Joseph away, however Thaye is blocking the stairs and says Joseph has something she needs. She grabs them both and brings Joseph down before smashing Susan on a mirror and the wall, tossing her through the resulting hole. Then Thaye throws Joseph against the shelves and kicks him while asking for what she's looking for. Joseph manages to run to the kitchen and grab an electric knife. Thaye comes close enough to startle him, causing him to fall on a tray filled with knives and forks. As she pushes him down to insert the cutlery into his back, Joseph stabs her neck with a corkscrew. When Thaye takes it out, her neck is cut open. She calls him out for being unable to kill his father but not hesitating to attack her. At that moment Polly calls Thaye saying she has what she wants. Thaye rushes upstairs only to discover that Polly still thinks she's a thief and is offering her money. She takes Polly's dentures and licks them before putting them back on, then she notices that Polly's fake leg is missing. Suddenly Alice hits Thea with the leg, making her roll downstairs. Once she lands, Joseph proceeds to repeatedly smash her face with the dishwasher door until her head is nothing but mush. Seeing Joseph so violent reminds Alice of William's abuse. Afterward, Alice asks Joseph about the strange things she read in Benjamin's notebook. Joseph explains that his grandfather was considered unstable because he was convinced that devils could come to this world if someone read from the Necronomicon. He abandoned the family to travel the world and collect artifacts that could protect his loved ones from the devils. Since the demon in Thea was looking for something, one of the many objects in the attic must really work. Meanwhile, Susan finishes putting Polly to bed. When she's about to leave, Polly sits up and calls her by her name for the first time in years. Susan comes closer and sees her mother stand up on the bed with the bedsheet covering her. She hugs Polly as she cries, saying how much she misses her. Polly claims that the whole family will be reunited soon and William is already on his way. Then Susan removes the bedsheet and discovers that Polly has been possessed too. When someone knocks on the window, Susan pushes the curtains and finds Edgar, who says he misses her. Susan opens the window and Edgar crawls in to kiss her, which possesses her as well. Downstairs, Alice looks out and notices that Edgar is gone, only to be startled by the dog barking at her. Susan then appears and says the demons aren't their enemies, they only want the Kandarian dagger that Benjamin stole from them. Suddenly all the lights explode and Edgar starts beating up Joseph while the TV keeps playing the wedding footage. After knocking Joseph up, Edgar attacks Alice, telling her to stay out of family matters. Susan calls Edgar out because he promised he wouldn't hurt their son, so Edgar hits her with a candelabra. Then Edgar grabs Joseph by his hair and pushes his face into Thea's open head. Joseph says he knows where the dagger is to make Edgar pull him up, then he stabs his father with a pen. They start to fight all over the room and Susan tries to protect her son, so Edgar attacks her too. Alice dodges the chaos as she crawls out of the room to hide in the closet. She can hear the violence continuing around the house until Edgar smashes Joseph's head on the closet door. The wood breaks as Joseph is pushed through and he tells Alice to find the dagger before Edgar drags him away. Once Alice doesn't hear any more noises, she comes out and fills the trimmer with gas so she can have a weapon. Then she goes upstairs and finds Susan bleeding on the floor. She's also distracted by a wedding picture. At that moment Polly attacks her, smashing her head on any available surface. After a few hits, Polly pushes Alice's face against the trimmer's blade and stabs her ear with a pen. Polly wants Susan to do the kill, but when she's about to press the trimmer's button, Alice grabs a glass shard and stabs Polly in the eye. Then she ties her to the chair lift and activates it, so Polly is dragged downstairs. After painfully removing the pen from her ear, Alice gets ready to finish Polly with the knife she took earlier, but she's startled by Edgar and Joseph crashing through the ceiling. Edgar is coming for her, so Alice grabs the trimmer and Susan and drags them to the bathroom. She blocks the door with a cabinet before grabbing a hair dryer, which she uses to tie Susan to the toilet. There's still a piece of pen in Alice's ear, so she removes it with tweezers. Susan keeps complaining about what Alice did to her family, so Alice finally snaps and says this was always in her family as she shows her the scars William's abuse has left on her body. While Alice uses the trimmer to try to make a hole in the ceiling, Susan succumbs to the possession and attacks her. They repeatedly hit each other before they land in the tub, where Susan uses the curtains to start suffocating Alice. Her demonic power allows her to climb on the ceiling and leave Alice hanging by her head. Alice has managed to grab a razor and slashes Susan's face until she drops her. Then Alice retrieves the trimmer and turns it on to cut Susan a few times to bring her down. Now Alice can go through the hole in the ceiling to access the attic, where she begins to look for the dagger. She can hear Joseph's voice offering his help, but she ignores him, so Joseph enters the attic through the same hole and confirms he's been possessed. Alice finds a bag full of old artifacts and grabs the first dagger she sees to stab Joseph, but it does nothing. While Joseph mocks her, Alice keeps trying dagger after dagger until she finally finds the right one. Joseph's eyes turn to normal before he drops dead. When Alice looks down at his body, Susan appears in the hole, so Alice grabs the trimmer and climbs out the window. Unfortunately, she trips and rolls down, causing her to drop the dagger. As Susan and Edgar come after her, Alice jumps into the chimney and slides down. Soon Susan enters the chimney too and Alice attacks her with the trimmer until Susan's head lands on the fireplace. Alice uses the fireplace to return to the living room and Edgar follows her. He blocks the blade when she attacks, but Alice keeps pushing until she slices his head open. Next she pulls out a lighter and throws it on the carpet to start a fire. As the flames spread, Alice goes outside and grabs the dagger to stab the incoming dog, finally killing him too. The house slowly burns down, destroying all the bodies and wedding pictures. Alice thinks it's over, but she's horrified to hear William's voice. His charred body comes out of the house, saying he should have killed her. When he reaches the gazebo where they got married, he sets it on fire. Alice runs as fast as possible and makes it to a construction site. The office is locked, but looking around reveals a walkie-talkie that she uses to try to call for help. The device begins playing her wedding song and Alice can see William's shadow approaching. However, he disappears when the song ends. Suddenly Alice is dragged by her leg and thrown into a pit, where her ankle is impaled on a steel rod. William tosses a hose into the pit too to start filling it with hot tar. Alice painfully pulls her leg off and tries to escape, but William blocks her. When he asks for the dagger, Alice throws it in the tar. William lets go of her to retrieve it, so Alice pulls some cables to bring down a jackhammer. As William grabs the dagger, Alice stabs him with the jackhammer and turns it on, slowly destroying his body until the pieces sink in the tar. Then Alice tries to leave, but William grabs her leg again. Luckily she manages to grab the dagger and stab him with it. As he dies for good, Alice has a vision of the real William telling her that he loves her. However, she says that isn't enough and returns to reality to crush his head without mercy. Afterward, Alice climbs out of the pit and reaches a road, where she's found by paramedics. They ask her who did this to her and she only says, "My ex-husband." Meanwhile, Polly is crawling on the road. When a worried driver checks on her, Polly attacks her. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you can watch more videos like this. Thanks for watching.